Welcome to Power Your Life Today, the podcast that helps you live a life of more service, value, and love. I'm your host, Christy Joe, mind and body strategist and creator of Power Your Life Today. If you are ready to build and apply mindset strategies to help you stand in your power, head over to poweryourlifetoday.com to download the Female's Guide to Powering Her Life. Welcome to Season 3, where I'm interviewing my parents about parenting power. They're the two people I admire most in this world, and I'm delighted to share them and their insights with you. Today, we are discussing teenagers and how the aliens sucked their brains out. In our conversation, we're going to explore a few different topics here, and as always, hope that this is not coming across as the end-all, beat-all of advice and what you should be doing, but more exploration and hope that there are some great takeaways and thoughts for you. We will talk about where the phrase "the aliens sucked their brains out" actually came from. Turns out I misquoted it, but we'll run with it. And how my parents felt about raising not just 7 teenagers, but many others as well. We had many other live-in cousins or adoptees and things like that. How teenagers make decisions based on emotion, not logic and consequences. The time my parents surprised me on my birthday at the high school and how I felt at the time versus now. Ways that my dad was able to interact with us kids even while being a working dad. The traditions our family had and how this helped with bonding and connection even during chaotic teenage years. How to handle when your teenager is acting out and experimenting with things that make you upset. The art of apologizing to teenage children, seeking to understand and validate and properly communicate without jumping to conclusions. There's a lot waiting for you in this episode, so we'll get to that in just one moment. We just want to thank our sponsor, ButcherBox. When it comes to meat, quality matters, but finding high-quality, healthy meat can be hard. ButcherBox's goal is to find you the healthiest and highest quality beef, chicken, and pork every single month. They hold their suppliers to strict standards and taste test every cut before putting it in your ButcherBox. ButcherBox is delivered every single month to your door in a refrigerated carton. You can hand select the cuts, the types of meat you would like to receive each month. You can change it up every single month, and all for less than $6 per meal. I love being able to trust that I'm getting grass-fed beef. Huge difference in the omegas, the inflammation in your body, which impacts your brain and your health, and longevity, prevention of disease, and helping you feel better and achieve more in your life every single day. I want to invite you to give ButcherBox 1 to 2 month test drive and see if you don't feel the difference between real quality sourced meat and your conventional meat that you're buying at the grocery store. You can click the link in the show notes of whatever podcast player you are listening to this. I do receive a small kickback for you using that code. That's how I'm able to offset the cost of all of this free production of material to get it to you. So I do thank you for using my affiliate codes and links whenever possible. The food system in this country needs huge improvement. Animal welfare issues continue to surface. People in rural areas have limited access to clean meat sources, and there is not enough information out there on how to eat well. Unless, of course, you listen to like a podcast called Body Buddies. ButcherBox is dedicated to doing their part to connect families with the foods they want to eat by establishing an always open neighborhood butcher online.
What matters is how you deal with it, because you could have a little bit of this and you could harbor resentment for the rest of your life and you destroy yourself. Or you can take a really bad situation and say, I'm not going to repeat history. So this is some of those things.
Learn and always have choice instead of pawning things off like, well, it's because of my parents and the way I was raised, and I see that all the time in the health world because of my genetics. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
You know? It's the precursor, but you get to decide whether to light the fire or not.
Yeah. And whether you decide to be a victim or not. So.
Yeah. Okay, today we're talking about teenagers. The aliens sucked their brains out. Who knows where that came from? I can't imagine. Where did I get that phrase?
Well, it wasn't from us, except that we repeated it because we had heard it. Kind of an interesting story.
Right?
Oh, yeah. When Denzel
coined
was...
the phrase.
Oh, we're good, but we're not that good. So when Denzel was 14, Dad and I were in a meeting at church, and it was a social counselor who was coming to talk to the men and women in this group. And he said, you know, you'll find that when teenagers, about the time they turn 13, the Martians come and suck their brains out. And I remember sitting there very smugly saying, Denzel's 14, to myself. I didn't say it out loud, but saying, Denzel's 14 and he's fine. maybe if you don't parent right, and let me tell you, don't ever, ever say that, whether it's out loud or to yourself, because you're just asking for trouble. And come about age 15 and a half, the Martians came in full force, and or maybe that's just when it manifested.
I don't remember at what point it did, but it did.
It sure did. But I think, that's just a very nice way to say that teenagers have a hard time, and it can seem like somebody came and sucked their brains out. But I love what Dad explains, since he teaches biology and medical anatomy and physiology. So we're kind of used to this talk around our house. But as he reminded me one time that a person's brain, from the time they're born until they're about, is it age 21?
25-ish, I think.
Okay, that there's the two hemispheres, left and right, and that there's a kind of a cleft between them. They're not merged. And so you have a teenager who thinks they know everything, but they don't, because until that brain is merged totally, they can't really anticipate like consequences down the road, long-term, putting off rewards. How do you put it?
Well, they base choices and decisions more so on emotion than on logic.
And what makes me happy right now,
right,
rather than, we'll wait for
thinking
this.
about what consequences there are or what's down the road.
Yeah. So they don't think as clearly as they think they do. If you're only working with half a brain, you think you've got a full brain, but you don't. And I think that's why Heavenly Father gave us families, parents, to raise children, to help nurture them, help teach them and train them, because hopefully their brains are working a little bit better. Not perfectly, but a little bit better. So
have you observed any differences throughout all of those teenage years? Are there different phases at all? Is there any kind of pattern that you've observed? Because you had 7 kids go through that.
Plus a niece and 2 nephews and borrowed and... ... Yeah. I don't know if you can say, categorically, this happens here and this happens there. I think you just have to be very aware and flexible. But I think you need to know that things are going to be kind of weird. They're going to be emotional. They're going to be hot. That when you deal with a lot of emotions, when you deal with difficult situations, the stakes can get a little bit high. And kind of going back to some of the other stuff we've already talked about, if you haven't learned how to be matter of fact, you're going to be in for a long, rough ride, I think. It's rough and long way, but if you can learn how to be matter of fact, it's going to remove a lot of trouble for you as parents. It may not remove trouble for the child, but it does for the parent, because you don't have to make a bunch of decisions. And I think when we get into emotional parenting, we are at the mercy of our children, because then they can run us back and forth.
I can only imagine that there's some ego of wanting to prove you're the parent and make sure the child knows you are the one in control. And perhaps that might be an area that some parents are having a hard time with or struggling with. So how do you balance that ego as well as staying emotionally connected and bonded in a loving way, like kind of a ruler versus loving, nurturing capacity?
Yeah. I think, one of the things that just comes to mind, simply because I was talking about it a little earlier today with someone who said, I really appreciated hearing you say that you went over to the school and apologized to your kids. I think when you start out when they're younger, thank goodness we're not given teenagers to start with generally. We're given babies and young children, and then we build on those relationships. And so I think just like a house, you really have to have a good foundation if you're going to build a a good structure on it. If you don't have a good foundation, you're going to be in trouble. And so, again, now maybe you didn't have the greatest elementary years because you just weren't thinking straight. I think the most important thing we can do as parents is to reassure our child of our love all the time. And you will hear things like, "Oh, Mom, leave me alone. Oh, Mom, you're so mushy. Mom, you're embarrassing me." How many times have I heard that? And guess what? I would still kids goodbye. I would still hug you because ultimately down underneath, it was vitally important to me that you knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that you were more important than any words that you would say, would you stop? You're embarrassing me. No. And so
I have a story about that. I'm going to interject here for a moment.
Okay, tell the story. I'd love to hear it.
Do you remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I was the only sophomore in the AP physics class, and that was a very insecure, very vulnerable time for me. I turned 16, and there were a bunch of very cute football player senior boys in that class, and on my birthday, you two walk into the classroom with balloons and singing happy birthday. And I wanted to crawl into a hole, to be honest. At the time, hindsight, I look back, I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a tricky, very vulnerable time. And then I appreciated it, but didn't know how to balance the embarrassment versus this is cool. It's just It's a fun memory now. So thank you for doing that, even though it's a time I probably didn't.
Well, and that's the thing, we've talked about this, how many times. And so it started at elementary school, and I think to be sure parents understand to not negate the value of showing up in your kids' classrooms from the time they're young, even if it's once a month. There is something to be said for Johnny being able to say, "Oh, that's my mom. Oh, that's your mom. Oh, that is so cool." There's just something that happens when kids' parents show up at school. And so at sixth grade, seventh grade, there were embarrassing times. I think it was Amelia or Natalie who said when I showed up at the intermediate school, 8th grade, "Mom, you can't show up here in your spandex."
That would be Amelia. Amelia would say that.
Well, I had been out running, training for a marathon, and I had to stop and drop something off, and I did not think anything of it, that I was in my running clothes. But, she just wanted to die. But, kind of like your thing with Mr. Shaheen's class, when it's all said and done, you'll forget the spandex, but you'll remember that your mom or your dad showed up, that you were that important, that they stopped in the middle of their day doing whatever, and they showed up. And so I think for parents to know, to be reminded of the utmost importance, if you want to be able to deal with your teenagers, they have to know they matter to you, not that they're just a pain in the neck.
Dad, what are your thoughts on being interactive with teenagers? We were really fortunate because all of us kids went to the same high school that you taught at. And I can remember lots of times it's fun to see you at assemblies. Once in a while, I can remember a few times coming in there to eat lunch.
Yeah.
I can imagine a lot of dads probably don't have that. So
yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to transfer over to Snow Canyon when it was built, was because you kids would go there. And I can say that I got to have each one of you in at least one class, and some of you as teacher aides as well. And I loved it. I really enjoyed having you guys in my classes. And let's see.
Just your interaction with the kids.
Oh, yeah. I liked interacting with you children, because I did it a lot when you were younger, too, telling you stories, playing you games, swinging you around, all those kinds of things.
Walking on the ceiling.
Daddy bear hug.
Yeah. And, this is the thing, one of the things that I thought of, because how many people have mentioned it to you kids, to Dad and I over the years, about you guys have a lot of traditions. Yeah, and I've thought about it, and kind of because of the last podcast we did, the importance of following through. And I think traditions kind of go along with that. It doesn't have to be a big thing like Christmas Day or something like that. What's one of the first traditions you remember, Christy?
The red plate on birthdays.
The red plate and the red glass. And what did we do on birthdays?
Oh, so
much. The very first thing.
The very first thing was breakfast. We had, or was there something before that? Did I miss?
No. I'd say breakfast.
Yeah, you would make a special breakfast. We would always, in family council, the week before, we'd be asked, what meals would you like for your birthday? So it would be planned ahead of time. We knew what we were getting for breakfast, for dinner, what kind of cake or pie we would have. And it was a very planned out. You knew it was going to be your special day. And then sitting down at a very sit down. But we always had, for the most part, sit down breakfast. It was never like, grab a Pop-Tart, see you later, ever.
Yeah. Yep. And which I'm really grateful for. Sometimes, I can say it in hindsight now. At the time, it was very difficult raising 7 children on a teacher's salary. I did some work that I could do from home, but we had to be very creative that way, and so we were very specific on what we had for meals each day of the week. You had cereal one day of the week, not every day. And
we loved it. So, we looked forward to it.
But see, again, the consistency, the security of knowing. And, that you guys would ask, can we have this? What day is it? Wednesday? Wednesday's cereal day. Okay, Friday.
Wow, deja vu right there. Just hearing you say that. What day of the week is it?
What day is it? You know what we're going to have for breakfast, depending on the day of the week. Friday is French Toast Friday. Saturday is Dad makes everybody's initials in pancakes. Dad always did that, and that was a tradition. And like with our birthday breakfast, it was a tradition that the birthday person got a treasure hunt for their last present. And, we've done it for so long. 9 birthdays a year, minimum,
Yep.
And for how many years, we just kind of take it for granted that that's just what we do. But I have had a few friends say, can I come to your house for my birthday? I just want a treasure hunt. And I'm going, you are really weird. and you just don't realize how maybe unique it is. And did I tell you before on the podcast about what my dad said about
I don't think
he thought he'd done a good job?
No.
I just thought this was, okay, it's perspective again. And anyway, so my dad and my mom died 2 years ago. About a year before that, I was spending some time with my parents, and grandfather to you, my dad and I were sitting at the counter, and we're talking about things, and I said, Dad, I hated my birthdays growing up. And he was really surprised, and I said, yeah, because all we did was wait till the end of the day, and then we had dinner, and maybe we went out to dinner and had presents, and then you went to bed. And it felt like nobody even cared that it was my birthday. And so we changed things, and so I told him what we did. And he looked at me, and it wasn't in chastisement or anything. It was just really sincerity. He said, wow, and I thought we did a good job.
Hmm.
And so, that really touched me, that I think my parents were doing the very best that they could. Was it perfect? Was it exactly everything I wanted? No, it wasn't. And did I do everything perfectly for you? Probably not, huh?
Oh, wow. I'm pretty darn close.
Oh, well, thank you.
From my adult perspective.
Okay, there we go. From your more brain sealed together perspective.
Right.
But I thought, that was such a good teaching moment for me that I think that's all we can expect is, did we do a good job? Did we do what we thought was a good job?
Yeah.
And so, again, how important it is to cut people a little bit of slack, especially our parents. You know, and I know kids that have had rough times, but they're made rougher when the child holds on to the resentment, holds on to everything that was ever done to them that was bad, and never lets go, never forgives, never moves on, never learns and improves on what they experienced. Mm-hmm. And so I'll take it full circle. It brings us back to teenagers, because that was one thing I think I was very fortunate. I promised myself I would never forget what I wanted to change as a teenager. Now that perspective is a little bit different, and now I'm able to see so many of the good things that went on while I was growing up. Wasn't perfect, but there were a lot of good things that went on. And so I think as parents, we need to stop catering to our child's approval. This isn't about being popular with our child. It's about doing what is the best for them. And that may not be easy.
Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing is perhaps if we're threading tradition and those bonding moments and things into the family as they're growing up, perhaps that can help a little bit with some more volatile years.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
And, just yesterday, we had Cayman and Mila. Cayman is going on 4, and Mila is almost 1. We had them for 2 days and overnight. And Cayman had a little situation last night where he was ready for bed. He got his pajamas on and everything, but he decided to pee in his pull-up rather than go on the toilet. And he didn't tell me. He just came and put his pull-up in the trash, and then he kind of let me know that he didn't have any pull-up on. And so, where's the pull-up? And finally figured out what had happened. And so I took him to the closet. I said, Cayman, I don't have any more pull-ups, so you're going to need to wear a diaper. Well, he came unglued. I will just make it succinct. For about a half hour, he screamed. But his screaming was on the timeout chair, because I got the diaper on him, and I marched him in on the timeout chair. When you're ready to calm down and talk, don't be a squawk box at your grandma. And he screamed, and so we shut the doors, and Dad and I went and watched our little TV show. And I'd go in on commercial and say, are you ready to talk yet? And keep screaming away. But each time I would go in, I'd say, Cayman, do you know Grandma loves you? I love you. When you're ready to talk, you let me know. And eventually, about a half hour later, he was ready to talk. And he calmed down, and I held him in my arms, and I explained again, this is why. Maybe next time you won't pee in your pull-up. Next time you'll take the time to go on the toilet. And I think that carries over again. If we can be consistent that way, loving but consistent with our young children, then they're used to it by the time they're a teenager, when they call and say, but I'm having fun with my friends. Can I stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning? And you say, sorry, the guidelines are you're to be home by midnight. Rah, 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 rah. I'm sorry. Nevertheless, you need to be home by midnight. You know what the consequences are. And they can rant and yell, and they're still home at midnight because they know you follow through. But that you love them. It's from what you do when they're little to the teenage years and beyond.
I'd love to throw a few situations that I've encountered by some of I have a lot of teenagers in my life right now, and so keeping anonymity, I would like to see what perspective you have on these situations and get a little more practical here with these tips, if that's okay.
Oh, go for it. Dad's all ready for you.
Before, everyone listening. All right. So last night I get a text about this situation. And this child, I'd say probably between the age of 16 and 18. And they are really in that phase of experimenting with their looks and different adornments and colors and, the fun of figuring all of that out. And they go home with these fun adornments, and Dad is not happy. And he gets yelled at and grounded, and this child or teenager let me know what hurt was they were expecting their mom to stick up for them, and the mom didn't. And that hurt even more. Mm-hmm. Now, because we're doing this podcast, I could kind of see it from both sides. So It's just very interesting. Number one, did the dad overstep his bounds? Is there a better way to handle when your kid shows up and you're like, no, don't you dare? And I'm sure you might have a story with that.
Which one would you like to hear?
Never me. My hot seat track didn't come out till early 20s.
Okay, I will say a couple of things. First of all, it is so easy to be the cool, calm parent at the table, looking at the situation from the outside in. I'm not the dad who's put in a hard day's work, who just found out that the mortgage got kicked out because somebody bounced a check, and, you just don't know all the elements that are piled up. So he's primed for this teenager walking in looking like a freak in the dad's opinion, because it's different than what he saw the child leave the home as. Yeah. And so it's I think it is so understandable when a parent, quote, freaks out. Wouldn't it be nice if the child could get outside of themselves and say, wow, Dad, that's not like your usual behavior. Is something going on? Would you like to talk about it? But what 16 to 18-year-old can do that? And It's almost the same for the parent who says, wow, Susie, your hair looks really different. Is something going on in your life? Is there something you'd like to talk about? Let's talk about the color you chose. Let's talk about the feathers you wove in and out of your hair, or whatever it was. But a lot of times we don't have the presence of mind to do that. And so the dad maybe exploded. Well, it kind of goes back to, did you learn when your children were little that when you made a mistake, you apologized? And so for Dad to go tentatively knock on the daughter or son's door and say, can we talk? I was out of line. I should not have overreacted. Can I just say that your new look is really surprising to me? And I thought you had beautiful hair before. And so this is really different for me. Can you help me understand you by telling me what your thought processes were? Instead of what do we adult parents say, what were you thinking? That's really good for communication opening, Yeah. And so, I think what, Christy, you and I have talked about a lot is the importance of questions, and not to be the tyrant.
Lecturer.
Right.
A lecturer. Yeah.
All
just
the words. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody that is trying to get all this there's a word. the king of Inquisition.
There we go.
We get around to it. Anyway, and so I think parents really need to remember, go for feeling, try to understand your feelings. Why am I all of a sudden so uptight? And so Susie walks in and Dad says, wow, this is a different look. Can we talk in about 15 minutes? Now, I can relate that we've had a few phone calls from different children that have been extremely difficult. And poor Dad, because a couple of them have come when we're in the study, and Dad hears me say, you what? You what? Here's your father. Because I knew enough that right then and there was not the time for me to be talking, because I would probably say something I should not. And Dad is more mellow. Oh, that's interesting. oh, wow, you don't say. And then once I had time to step back and just breathe, and then I could come to the phone and say, I love you, but it's not good for me to talk right now. I will call you tomorrow. And I think that is very appropriate when a parent knows that they are volatile, that maybe things have just struck them the wrong way, to say, I love you, but I can't talk right now. And don't leave it at that. It's not a wall. It's not a punishment. It's just a statement of fact. I love you. Let's talk tomorrow. And so I think that's really an important thing to remember.
That's great advice. Dad, do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't know. I'm searching.
I can tell you. And he'll nod his head. See, I know Dad really well, huh? And I think his philosophy in life is stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. And he does. Yeah. He does really, really good. And I think, because of my past experience with growing up, I wanted a man who was like my dad. Stay calm. And I didn't want to repeat history by saying, do something. What are you going to do? Do something. Because that's not Dad. And it doesn't help for someone to be shouting at another person saying, what are you going to do? And so I think it's really important to learn how to, again, it goes back to that first podcast, to learn how to work well as a team. We've got to be a team in parenting. And no two people really think everything alike. But I think if you learn how to work together, it can be a really good thing to have two parents.
And I can say, though, probably I've made 2 really hard phone calls home before, and both times I did feel that calmness and that, if you have to make a hard phone call home as a child to your parents, that's a scary thing. There's a lot of judgment. So,
well, I think because you fear, will this be the time that they tell me I'm not worthy, I'm no good? Yeah. And I can't imagine that. I mean, we've had some very interesting phone calls, and we have never said that.
Well, it just segues into the next area that I really want to explore, which is because, unfortunately, that does not happen in a lot of households. And as I'm coaching individuals a lot, and we're doing some deep subconscious work into why they do what they do, and time again, it comes back to a lot of programming that has happened from parents. And of course, we're working through, and like at the beginning of this, you said you really have the decision to let what your parents did impact you or change and rise above it. But when it comes to what parents have told you, when it comes to those limits, because they said, you're really not that smart. You're really, you're okay, but you're never going to be one of those pretty girls. When those types of labels have happened, it's really hard to hear because I've never had that experience. So I don't empathize, but I can sympathize and do my best to help them. So, number one, is there a way for parents to become self-aware enough that we really stop that from happening? And secondly, if a parent listening to this is one of those children that perhaps is unintentionally passing that on, how do we go about this?
Do you have any ideas right off?
No, I don't.
Okay. When Dad and I were first married, some of the stuff that we listened to about having a good marriage was communication. And there are rules to communication. One of them is that you cannot, in good communication, cannot say, you are this or you are that. You can say, I feel like this is a difficult situation. But when I say, you are no good, you have blown it, anything like that is derogatory, you cannot do. It is against the law in rules of communication. And so for a parent who may have that tendency to say, okay, I want to be better. So I am going to make sure that I work on, okay, so Susie comes home with really weird outfit, weird hair, whatever. I'm not going to say, you look disgusting. I'm going to say, wow, this is a surprise to me. Can you give me a few minutes to get my thoughts together? Has the parent been derogatory at all? No, they've owned their feelings. They've helped Susie recognize that maybe this is a shock to the parent. And, okay, I just had a thought. Do kids set up their parents? Because kids know their parents well. They know what's going to set them off. And I can say this because I did this when I was 26 years old. I think it was about 26. I was going home for my brother's wedding. We had just had our second child, Jamie. So I have a baby. I'm flying home from the Four Corners area. I realized I hadn't packed a lipstick, so I stopped at the little pharmacy there in Farmington, New Mexico. And they didn't have a big selection, and so I chose a pink lipstick. And the thought was, my mom's going to hate this. And the first thing when I walked in the door at home, my mom said, that's an awful color on you. You should never wear that color. And I blew. I was so mad. But I had set her up. I knew she would hate that pink lipstick, and so I bought it. So why would I feel justified in getting mad when I'm the one who set her up? And I think teenagers do that sometimes. And so as parents, we have to be really careful because we may be being set up. Johnny knows what will make me jump higher than the roof. And so am I going to fall for it? Or am I going to go, that's interesting. Would you please go to your room? I need to think for a few minutes and then I'll come talk to you. And he'll probably go, whoa, what happened? Oh, I'm in trouble now. Because she didn't blow up. She's in control of herself. You know, and teenagers a lot of times depend on having the upper hand because they can make the parents blow sky high. And, you know, parents may think that's intimidating to kids. It's not. So I think the most important thing a parent can do is keep their cool, do what they need to. I don't recommend going and drinking. Take a few minutes out, you know, calm your jets and just think and really, so that one baby step I would say is get rid of the word you. You make me so mad. You are disgusting. You are, you know, whatever.
Unless it's a compliment. Then you can use you.
There you go. You are beautiful. Yeah, all those things.
I have another thought that just came up, something that a lot of my teenage little cuties in my life will tell me is it's just so nice being able to talk to you. And I ask, why can't you ask these questions to your parents? And I realize, you know, it's a unique situation I'm in, and I'm grateful they trust me. But the bigger question in my mind is when they say, because they jump down my throat whenever I ask a question and assume there's a problem, rather than simply being curious. And that concerns me a little. Is that common? Did that ever happen to you?
Do you remember where most of our talks took place?
Down in
on the kitchen floor,
well,
with a bowl of cereal.
Yeah, on the kitchen floor.
And Dad was asleep because he didn't want to stay up that late waiting for you kids to come home. But, you know, that's the first flash that comes into my mind is some of the best talks are done when it's not critical, when we're on explosive mode, when we're just, wow, how was your night? Do you feel like some cereal? Now, I know that goes against healthy eating.
Chocolate fudge bombs. Chocolate fudge bombs now, everyone. They're on my blog.
But I would rather see somebody eat a bowl of cereal and have a great conversation, laughing and talking with their child, their kids. I mean, I'd tell Dad about it the next morning, and he'd feel so disappointed because
I missed out.
Yeah, and he did. He did. But I think you kids will never forget those just fun times talking on the kitchen floor Why couldn't we have been on the couch? It had to be the kitchen floor, linoleum.
By the end of the day, the way that Hunts run their life, we were all exhausted. Just sit down where you can.
Yeah, and we're close to the fridge that way.
Yeah, more milk, please.
Yeah, but, I think that is such a good question. There's a TV commercial going on in Utah right now that shows the girls, probably 13, 14, 15, and the parents are doing this and that, and she's saying, now would be a good time to talk to me. But they're dashing off here and there, and they're not really paying attention. Now would be a good time to talk to me. Now would be, and then they're at the theater, and the dad leans over and says, can we talk? And she about blows up. Now? You want to talk now? And so, again, I think you have to take the moments and be aware as a parent when is a good moment. We talked a lot in the car. I think you guys may have dreaded, oh no, I have to drive with Mom. She's going to talk.
I wouldn't say dread, but we knew there'd be talk.
Yeah, well, I think because in the car, that's when there were more important, not trivial things talked about. And there were some that I missed that, I've thought about, particularly with Denzel. After the fact, now that he has passed, and I look back at some of the things like, and again, okay, I'm cutting myself slack. I'm not condemning myself, but when you have a 16-year-old boy, 16 and a half, maybe 17, and you go pick him up from the high school for something, and his friend gets in the car, and you can smell alcohol. I was an ignorant parent. I did not know better. I did not question when Denzel said, oh yeah, that's my friend. He's been drinking. Well, if your friend's drinking, you want to bet you might be too. And then it was just, a year, 2 years ago, a year and a half, that another one of Denzel's friends happened to come by the house, and we ended up spending quite a bit of time together, and he told me how he was drinking at high school, and at the time, the then athletic director knew exactly what was going on and said, don't say anything, I'll just look the other way. And so nothing was done to help this boy stop drinking. And he was drinking hard. Wow. And so I think, the fine line for parents to pay attention to every signal, whether it's just feeling a red flag in your heart that something's not right, and you don't have to be hounding the child and suspicious of every little thing, but I think it's important to be loving and caring and do your homework. There's so much. I could write a book.
Wow. Yeah, we probably could keep going on. Well, why don't we wrap this one up? Because I think at least we've got people thinking and some good tools shared. Dad, did you ever feel like the bad guy? Did you ever deal with those thoughts and have to work through those ever? Or
yes.
Did that not?
Yes, I think so. My tendency is to try to avoid conflict and not deal with it. But sometimes I had a short fuse too, and sometimes, I had to deal with things, or sometimes I didn't deal with things very well.
And I think the important thing here is kids are very forgiving if it's the uncommon occurrence that you have a short fuse or you don't deal with something well. But when it's day in and day out, and there is no sign of hope for the child, no demonstration of love, of caring, that's when it can get beyond what we're trying or fixing or hope.
Yeah, because I always did love you guys, and that never changed.
And I think the
we
kids
knew that.
Yeah,
definitely. Did you two ever, I'm sure you did, but I'd love to hear how how did you help each other with some of those thoughts, or when things were difficult and maybe you were feeling like either you were the bad guy or you were frustrated? How, as a couple, did you help each other through those things?
Well, I think, because it happened a lot when there's the two of you, and we'd always talk in our room and just say, oh my gosh, I did not handle that very well. But the perspective of the other one say, are you kidding? You did great. You didn't beat him. You didn't this, and so again, having the perspective of your partner saying, no, you did good. And then you can say, but I could have done better. Well, maybe next time you will, And I remember, because a lot of times I was the one saying, oh, I did not handle that very well. And Dad was always there to support me and say, no, I'm amazed. How do you do this? And so I think that's the biggest key is, so I didn't handle it perfectly, but Dad did not berate me for it. Or Dad didn't handle something perfectly, and I didn't say, what kind of a dad are you? We never attacked each other. And I think that's really, again, goes back to that very first thing. More concerned with your marriage relationship and then with what's going on with the kids.
I agree.
See, I told you, he supports me really good.
Great example. Wow, this has been really insightful. And again, going back to that, no one has all the answers. It's constantly figuring it out. Everyone's situation is so unique, and hopefully there's some principles here that our listeners can learn from or think about. Maybe it triggers a thought in their mind that we didn't even talk about. And I think we all of us would agree that if parents are maybe having any of those insights, that's probably inspired, and go with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I think, to remember that Heavenly Father did not send babies with the manual that says how to be a perfect parent. I always wanted one. I never got one. I was really bugged that I didn't get this manual with these sweet babies that I got, because I needed it. And so, for people to remember that you don't compare your worst with someone else's best. Just look at things, see what you can learn, what can you implement. If it's one thing I will not attack with the word you today, then it's a big step. Be a little better. You don't have to be perfect.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you've liked what you've heard, please definitely go over and leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. The best thing to do is think of 2 to 3 friends who may benefit from this information as well, and send them a direct link to the podcast. We are grateful that you're here. We love feedback. If you ever want to reach out to me, I do pass on messages to my parents, and so you can reach me at christyjo@body-buddies.com. That's KRISTYJO at body-buddies, BUDDIES.com. Now go out and power your life to be one of more service, value, and love.